And I'm going to have a quick look at some alarming statistics about the clothing industry before we look into the direct source of why the Aral Sea has been destroyed by our clothes. An estimated 10,000 items of clothing are sent to the landfill every 5 minutes in the UK. In Britain, we now purchase 5 times the amount of clothes we bought in the 1980s. There are various different estimates, but apparently the average American woman buys 68 new items of clothing per year. Many people have excessive clothing collections. Former Philippine First Lady Imelda Marcos had a 3,000 pair shoe collection, so that's one person with 3,000 pairs of shoes. The average woman spends 6 months of her working life and 4 days each year deciding what to wear. And again, that's just because of the sheer quantity of clothes we actually have. Almost 3/4 of us throw away at least one item of clothing each year. Reasons given include, it no longer fits me, I am bored of wearing it, it has become unfashionable, and I bought it on an impulse sale. So lots of people get clothes that they don't really need and they buy it in the spur of the moment and they actually just end up sitting around in the wardrobe and ultimately in the landfill. 1 in 7 women said being pictured twice and tagged in the same dress on different nights on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram was a definite no-no. 2 in 5 confess they discard an outfit if it gets fewer than 10 likes. The average British woman has 21 pairs of shoes according to a 2013 study, and 9 pairs are never worn, worth on average £354. According to the UN, garment production uses more energy than the aviation and shipping industries combined and accounts for 10% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. So the number one trouble clothing material for the Aral Sea is cotton. Cotton accounts for 21% of total global fibre used for clothing. Globally, cotton covers just 2.4% of the world's cultivated land, but uses 6% of the world's pesticides and 16% of insecticides, more than any other single major crop. A study of rainwater in a Brazilian cotton region found that rainwater contained 19 different pesticides, 12 of which were used in cotton production. Cotton needs a lot of water. It takes 10,000 litres of water to produce 1 kilo of cotton. It takes 2,700 litres of water to make 1 cotton t-shirt. 57% of cotton farming takes place in areas under high water stress, according to data compiled by the World Resources Institute. The Aral Sea in Central Asia illustrates the effects of cotton water consumption. It used to be the world's 4th largest lake, but it shrank to just 10% of its former volume through decades of diverting water chiefly to irrigate cotton farms. The shrinking of the Aral Sea has been called one of the planet's worst environmental disasters. The region's once prosperous fishing industry has been devastated, bringing unemployment and economic hardship. So, the Aral Sea shrank to 1/10 of its volume, chiefly because of cotton and the clothing industry, the fashion industry. Because the demand for cotton was so high across the globe, an entire lake vanished, basically. Much of what used to be the lake has become a toxic and pesticide-laden desert. 43 million tons of pesticide-laden dust is blown into the air every year. As a result, the Aral Sea region suffers from the highest rates of throat cancer in the world. So because of the extensive cotton farming in the area, not only did the Aral Sea disappear, the resulting desert area was basically a toxic waste field filled with the pesticides from the cotton industry. There are other types of clothing I'd like to have a quick look at. Many people tout organic cotton as a good alternative. Analysis of organic cotton published in 2016 found that organic cotton had half the global warming potential of conventional cotton, 91% less use of fresh water from lakes and streams, and approximately a third of the demand for energy. So organic cotton is definitely much better for the environment than conventional cotton, but there are still definitely better sources of clothing. Before I move on to sources of clothing which are better for the environment and what practices we maybe should have now, I'll look at a couple of other troublemakers. Synthetic clothing. 65% of the world's clothing currently produced is synthetic. Nylon and polyester clothes are made from petrochemicals. These synthetics are non-biodegradable. Nylon manufacture creates nitrous oxide, a greenhouse gas 310 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Microplastics end up in the sea when people wash plastic clothes at home. It has been estimated that 35% of microplastics that enter the ocean come from synthetic clothing. As you can see, synthetic clothing is, if anything, worse than cotton clothing. It causes damage literally just by you washing at home in your washing machine. Bamboo clothing. Whilst bamboo is sustainable and more environmentally friendly, the process to turn it into clothing is not. Harsh environmentally damaging chemicals are used to make the material a half natural, half synthetic product, meaning that bamboo clothing is actually most often technically classed as rayon. It has been proven that the harmful chemicals often leach out into the environment and additionally negatively affect the health of people in the production areas. In some instances, bamboo fabric only needs to be 10% organic bamboo in order for it to be labelled as made with organic materials. I guess bamboo fabric ultimately, it's often thought of as one of the green fabrics, but bamboo fabric is ultimately maybe best than synthetic and cotton, but it's also definitely not the best on the list of different clothing options you can get these days. Modal, made from wood pulp, the source of wood used to make modal is sometimes very environmentally damaging. Less reputable modal manufacturers have been accused by the Rainforest Action Network of forest destruction in Indonesia. Neurotoxin carbon disulfide is used to produce the wood into a fabric, which can then be introduced into the environment through the air and through contaminated water. Not only does this harm any animals and plants that it comes into contact with, it is also devastating for the people who make the clothes, who can experience serious medical problems from liver damage to blindness and even in some cases death. So there's some of the most common types of clothing that we'll have. I want to have a look at what is actually beneficial for the environment and what we can be doing in the clothing industry and as individuals. Number one, buy second-hand clothing, any material that's not synthetic. So obviously if we buy second-hand clothes, that's going to be much better for the environment because that clothing has already been made and it's not going to cause further damage. There are plenty of great thrift shops and second-hand charity stores where you can get some really great pieces of clothing for a bargain price. Second-hand clothing is a really cool thing. But once again, if you buy synthetic second-hand clothing, that is going to ultimately cause problems because when you put it in the washing machine, plastic particles will ultimately end up in the ocean. Number two, if you get organic cotton, get clothes in the natural cotton shades of colour. Don't get dyed cotton as that's also bad for the environment. So the dyeing process of clothing is often using chemicals that aren't very good for the environment. So where possible, and that also goes for all fabrics, where possible, get the natural shade of fabric rather than getting heavily dyed and processed clothing. Number three, local is always best. Find the clothing made from natural materials that are sourced locally. So what works for somebody in Australia in a sustainable and environmentally responsible way might not work for somebody in Germany or Scotland. Number four, look into clothing made from nettle, hemp and flax. I was amazed to find out recently that the common stinging nettle that many people associate as a weed was actually used for hundreds of years in Scotland to make clothing. There are still companies that make nettle clothing, so you can buy clothes made from nettle. It's similar to linen. Linen, of course, is made from the flax plant, and that's also really good for your health. It has antibacterial properties. It's much better for the environment. Linen, hemp and nettle have a much better impact on the environment because they don't require pesticides as much. I think hemp doesn't require any pesticides, and they require less space, they're more effective, and also the fabrics are actually better for our skin, so it's a win-win-win with those three types of materials. So hemp, linen and nettle are all fantastic materials. Number five, own less clothes. So this is an obvious one. A lot of us have far more clothes than we need, and our wardrobes are currently filled with items of clothing that we've never worn or have worn once in the last few years. If we have less clothes, then there's less of a demand on the environment to produce more clothing for us. And that also doesn't mean if you have any synthetic clothes, like I've discussed, they're bad when you put them in the washing machine. But if you throw out those synthetic clothes, they also go in the landfill. Unfortunately, I don't really have a good solution here because putting them in the landfill is not good for the environment. Keeping them and putting them in the washing machine is also not good for the environment because of the microplastics. The greatest thing would be if it's possible to recycle them into some other form of usable material that doesn't end up in the ocean. Number six, don't be afraid to post photos on social media with the same outfits. So I think this is quite a big thing for a lot of people. I've even had the thought myself that I don't want to post videos with the same outfit each time. And I think it's so deeply ingrained in our society, but it's a completely pointless thing. And obviously, if we all go out of the way to make sure that we wear different outfits when we're doing a video or having our photo taken, then we're also reinforcing this idea that everybody should have a different outfit for every occasion. And we're reinforcing the fast fashion industry. It is totally okay, and it's a fantastic thing if you wear the same outfit more than once. And if you also post pictures with the same outfit more than once. I think we need to do that in order to encourage a shift in mentality. The more people who do that, the more people will start doing it because they see that that's cool and normal. I have a little subsection here about how to stop microfibers getting in the sea. As I mentioned earlier, the majority of clothing is made from synthetic materials, and I could hedge a bet that many of the people watching this video will also have many synthetic clothing items. As I mentioned, we can't really put them in the landfill because that's not good. Continuing to put them in the washing machine is not good either, and a lot of us will choose just to keep wearing those synthetic items because they have them already. So I've got 3 points of what you can do to reduce the amount of plastic that goes in the ocean. Number 1, wash less. A lot of people wash more often than they need to. If you wear a t-shirt for one day and you've sat at home in the office, that t-shirt is probably good to be worn another day, but a lot of people will put everything that's been worn once in the washing machine. So if we wash less, then less plastic goes into the sea. Number 2, avoid buying synthetic clothing. So you might already have synthetic clothing, but you don't have to get any more synthetic clothing. So in the future, you can make sure that you're getting clothes from a better material. Number 3, hand wash. So apparently if you hand wash your clothing, that's going to result in less of the microplastics going into the sea. There are some steps that we can take to get less microplastic going in the sea. There are also some products you can buy that supposedly catch or filter the microplastics out in the washing machine. I'm not sure how effective they are, but they exist and it's something that we can look into. For this particular subject, I'm quite happy to not have excessive amounts of clothing, but that's me as a person. I know other people who have large wardrobes and lots of items of clothing. For them, I'd recommend that rather than just continually buying new clothing, I'd say that you can have like your outfit selection for the year. You can then sell on those clothes or give those clothes to charity shops that you had, and then get a whole new season of clothes from charity shops and secondhand places and from environmentally responsible places. But secondhand is definitely better in this instance because we want to put less demand for new material out there. And so if you did that and you had a whole range of clothes for 1 year and then you just changed your wardrobe each year, you would be getting no new clothes essentially. You would just be switching the clothes and you'd have a constantly refreshed wardrobe. So I think there are creative ways that we can have kind of a similar system to the way we have now. It's definitely worth thinking about how we can cut down our clothing demand. So I hope you've enjoyed this vlog, and there'll be more on the way soon. Please let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to cover, and if there's anything else you'd like to know about this subject, please feel free to write any comments and any thoughts you have. I'd really appreciate that. Have a great day.